Overcoming social pressure. Stop seeking approval. Start living authentically. Introduction. What if the life you're living isn't entirely your own? Take a moment to think about your biggest decisions, the career you chose, the clothes you wear, the opinions you express or keep to yourself, the dreams you abandoned. How many of those choices came from your own heart, and how many were quietly shaped by the fear of what other people might think? Most of us never notice it happening. We simply learn to fit in. We seek approval, avoid rejection, and slowly become experts at pleasing everyone except ourselves. The applause feels good for a moment, but behind the smiles often lives anxiety, self-doubt, and the unsettling feeling that something is missing. The truth is, social pressure is one of the most powerful forces in human life. It influences our confidence, relationships, ambitions, and even our identity. Left unchallenged, it can convince us to trade authenticity for acceptance without realizing the cost. But here's the good news. You don't have to spend the rest of your life living by someone else's expectations. This audiobook is your guide to breaking free from the invisible need for approval and discovering the confidence to live authentically. Together, we'll uncover why social pressure holds such power, how to overcome it, and how to build a life guided by your values instead of other people's opinions. Because the moment you stop seeking approval is the moment you finally give yourself permission to become who you were always meant to be. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The invisible force that shapes your life. Imagine walking into a room where everyone suddenly turns to look at you. Instantly, your posture changes. You become more aware of your clothes, your voice, even the way you're standing. Nothing about you has actually changed in that moment, yet something powerful has happened inside your mind. You have become aware of other people's attention. That invisible shift is the beginning of social pressure. Most people think social pressure only happens when someone directly tells them what to do. A friend urges them to try something. A coworker encourages them to follow the crowd. A family member insists on a particular career or lifestyle. While these are obvious forms of pressure, they represent only a small part of the story. The most influential social pressure is often silent. It doesn't shout, it whispers. It appears in the expectations we absorb from childhood, the trends we follow without questioning, the opinions we hesitate to express, and the choices we make simply because everyone else is doing it. Over time, these subtle influences become so familiar that we mistake them for our own desires. From the day we are born, we're surrounded by people teaching us how to behave. Parents reward certain actions and discourage others. Teachers praise students who fit expectations. Friends influence what feels acceptable. Society tells us what success should look like. Advertisements suggest what we should buy. Social media constantly reminds us how we should appear, where we should travel, what we should own, and even how happy we should seem. Little by little, these messages shape our thinking. There's nothing inherently wrong with learning from others. Human beings are social creatures. We survive by cooperating, sharing knowledge, and building communities. Without social influence, civilization itself wouldn't exist. The problem begins when outside expectations become more powerful than our inner voice. Think about how often people make decisions based on what will receive approval, instead of what feels genuinely right. Someone studies a subject they don't enjoy because it impresses their family. Another person stays in a relationship that no longer brings happiness because they're afraid of being judged. Someone else buys expensive things they don't need simply to appear successful. These decisions rarely happen because people are weak. They happen because the desire to belong is deeply rooted in human nature. Belonging has always been connected to survival. Thousands of years ago, being rejected by your tribe could mean facing danger alone. Our brains evolved to value acceptance because acceptance increased the chances of staying safe. Although modern life has changed dramatically, our minds still react strongly to the possibility of rejection. Today, the dangers are different. Instead of fearing wild animals or isolation from a tribe, We fear criticism, embarrassment, exclusion, and failure. Yet the emotional response remains surprisingly similar. This is why social pressure can feel so overwhelming. It doesn't simply influence our thoughts, it triggers emotions. Sometimes we silence ourselves during conversations because we worry about disagreement. Sometimes we laugh at jokes we don't find funny because everyone else is laughing. Sometimes we avoid pursuing a dream because we're afraid people will think it's unrealistic. These moments may seem insignificant on their own, but together they shape the direction of an entire life. What's even more surprising is how invisible this process becomes. Many people genuinely believe they're making completely independent decisions, when in reality, they're responding to expectations they never consciously questioned. They confuse familiarity with authenticity. They mistake approval for fulfillment. Pause for a moment and consider your own life. How many of your daily habits were chosen intentionally? Do you dress the way you truly enjoy, or the way you believe others expect? Do you speak honestly in every situation, or do you carefully edit your opinions to avoid conflict? Are your goals genuinely yours, or have they been inherited from family, friends, or society? These questions aren't meant to create guilt. They're meant to create awareness. Awareness is where freedom begins. The purpose of this audiobook isn't to encourage rebellion against everyone around you. Living authentically doesn't mean ignoring advice, rejecting relationships, or refusing to cooperate with society. Wisdom often comes from listening to others. The real challenge is learning to distinguish between influence and control. Healthy influence helps you grow while allowing you to remain true to yourself. Unhealthy pressure demands that you sacrifice your values in exchange for acceptance. One strengthens your identity, the other slowly replaces it. Throughout this journey, you'll learn how to recognize these invisible forces, question the beliefs you've unconsciously adopted, and develop the confidence to make choices based on your own values rather than the expectations of others. The first step isn't changing your life overnight, it's simply noticing. Because once you begin to see the invisible force shaping your decisions, it loses much of its power. And when you stop living on autopilot, you begin making choices that reflect who you truly are, not who the world expects you to be. Every authentic life begins with a single moment of awareness. This chapter is that moment. Chapter 2. Why we crave approval. Have you ever caught yourself checking your phone moments after posting a photo, hoping for more likes or comments? Or perhaps you've hesitated to share an opinion because you feared people might disagree with you. Maybe you've said yes when every part of you wanted to say no. If any of these situations sound familiar, you're not alone. The desire for approval is one of the most universal human experiences. It isn't a personal weakness or a character flaw. It's part of how we're wired. Understanding where this desire comes from is the first step toward making sure it serves your life, instead of controlling it. Thousands of years ago, our ancestors depended on one another for survival. Living in a group meant protection from predators, shared food, and greater chances of raising children successfully. Being accepted wasn't simply pleasant, it was essential. Imagine being separated from your tribe in the wilderness. Alone, your chances of survival drop dramatically. Because of this reality, the human brain evolved to value belonging. Acceptance became associated with safety, while rejection became associated with danger. Although the modern world is vastly different, your brain still carries much of that ancient programming. Today, being excluded from a social gathering won't threaten your survival, yet your mind often reacts as if it does. A critical comment, an ignored message, or public embarrassment can trigger feelings that seem far larger than the situation itself. That's because your emotional brain hasn't fully distinguished between physical danger and social rejection. But biology is only one part of the story. Our need for approval is also shaped by the environments in which we grow up. As children, we quickly learn which behaviors earn praise and which invite criticism. When we clean our room, we hear, "Good job." When we follow instructions, we're rewarded. When we break the rules, we may face disappointment or punishment. These experiences teach valuable lessons about responsibility and cooperation. However, they can also create an unintended belief. I am valuable only when others approve of me. Over time, many people begin connecting their self-worth to external reactions. They stop asking, "What do I believe?" and start asking, "What will people think?" Without realizing it, approval becomes a measure of identity. As we grow older, new influences appear. Friends shape our interests. Schools reward certain achievements. Workplaces define success through promotions, titles, and recognition. Society celebrates popularity, wealth, beauty, and status. Then comes social media, a tool capable of connecting millions of people, but also capable of magnifying the need for validation. For the first time in history, approval can be measured instantly. Every like, comment, share, and follower becomes a visible scorecard. It's easy to begin believing that numbers reflect personal worth. Imagine someone uploading a photo before going to bed. The next morning, instead of asking whether they enjoyed the experience the photo captured, they immediately count how many people reacted to it. If the response is lower than expected, disappointment sets in. Nothing about the memory has changed, yet their feelings about themselves suddenly have. This is how external validation quietly gains power. The problem isn't using social media or appreciating compliments. Positive feedback feels good because human connection matters. The danger appears when approval becomes a requirement rather than a bonus. There's an important difference between belonging and approval seeking. Belonging means being accepted for who you truly are. Approval seeking means changing who you are in order to be accepted. One creates confidence, the other creates dependency. Consider someone who loves painting but abandons it because friends say it's not a practical hobby. Or someone who dreams of starting a business but chooses a different path simply because it appears more respectable. They may receive praise for following expectations, but deep inside they often feel disconnected from themselves. The applause is real, the fulfillment isn't. The more we rely on approval, the more control we give away. Our emotions begin rising and falling according to other people's opinions. Compliments make us feel worthy. Criticism makes us question ourselves. Silence feels like rejection. Eventually, we stop becoming the author of our own lives and begin living as editors of other people's expectations. Fortunately, awareness changes everything. Once you recognize why you crave approval, you can begin separating natural human connection from unhealthy dependence. You can appreciate encouragement without requiring it. You can welcome feedback without allowing it to define your identity. Remember this simple truth: your value existed long before anyone praised you, and it remains even when someone disagrees with you. Approval is pleasant, but it is not proof of your worth. You don't need permission to pursue meaningful goals. You don't need unanimous agreement to live according to your values, and you don't need constant validation to know that your life matters. The desire to belong will always be part of being human. There's nothing wrong with wanting connection, acceptance, and supportive relationships. The goal is not to stop caring about people. The goal is to stop allowing their approval to determine your identity. When your sense of worth comes from within, instead of from the opinions around you, something remarkable happens. You stop chasing acceptance, and you finally begin choosing yourself. Chapter 3. The Hidden Cost of Living for Others. Imagine spending years climbing a ladder with determination, discipline, and endless effort, only to reach the top and realize it was leaning against the wrong wall. This is what happens to countless people who spend their lives seeking approval instead of pursuing authenticity. From the outside, everything may look perfect. They have respectable careers, stable relationships, impressive possessions, and the admiration of others. Yet deep inside, they carry a quiet question they can never seem to answer. Why don't I feel fulfilled? The answer is often simpler than they expect. They've spent so much time becoming the person everyone wanted them to be, that they've forgotten who they truly are. Living for others rarely happens all at once. It begins with small compromises. You stay quiet when you disagree because you don't want conflict. You choose the safer path because it earns praise. You laugh at jokes you don't find funny. You hide parts of your personality because you're afraid they won't be accepted. Each decision seems harmless on its own, but over months and years, those small compromises begin to reshape your identity. Eventually, you stop asking, "What do I want?" Instead, you ask, "What will make everyone else happy?" That question slowly becomes the compass guiding your entire life. One of the greatest costs of living for others is the loss of self-confidence. Confidence isn't built by receiving endless compliments. It's built by trusting yourself. Every time you ignore your own values or silence your own voice simply to gain approval, you weaken that trust. Your subconscious begins to notice a pattern. Every time my opinion matters, I ignore it. Over time, your inner voice grows quieter, while everyone else's opinions grow louder. Without realizing it, you've handed over the authority to direct your life. Another hidden cost is anxiety. When your happiness depends on other people's approval, life becomes unpredictable. You constantly wonder whether you've said the right thing, worn the right clothes, made the right decision, or met everyone else's expectations. Your mind becomes trapped in endless questions. Did I offend someone? What if they don't like me anymore? What will people think if I fail? This constant mental pressure is exhausting because you're trying to control something that has never been yours to control, the opinions of other people. No matter how carefully you behave, someone will misunderstand you. Someone will disagree with you. Someone simply won't like you. That is not a failure. Living for approval also limits your potential. Think about how many dreams never become reality, not because people lack talent, but because they fear judgment. A talented musician never shares their songs because they worry about criticism. A future entrepreneur stays in an unfulfilling job because failure might disappoint family and friends. A gifted speaker avoids public speaking because they're terrified of making mistakes in front of an audience. In every case, the obstacle isn't ability, it's fear. History is filled with people who achieved extraordinary things because they were willing to disappoint expectations. Every meaningful innovation, every courageous decision, and every remarkable achievement required someone to think differently than the crowd. Had they waited for universal approval, they would still be waiting. Living for others also damages relationships in ways many people never recognize. At first, people-pleasing appears kind and generous. You always say yes, you avoid arguments, you sacrifice your own needs to keep everyone comfortable. But over time, something changes. Resentment quietly begins to grow. You start feeling exhausted because your own needs are constantly ignored. You become frustrated that others don't appreciate your sacrifices, even though you rarely communicate what you truly want. Ironically, pretending to be someone else prevents people from knowing the real you. Authentic relationships cannot exist without authentic people. If everyone loves the version of yourself you've created to gain approval, do they actually know you, or do they only know the mask? Perhaps the greatest cost of all is losing your sense of identity. Imagine someone who chooses a career because it impresses their family rather than because it aligns with their interests. Years later, they have financial security, respect, and stability. Yet every morning they wake up feeling disconnected from the work they do. They aren't failing by society's standards. They're succeeding in someone else's definition of success. That kind of success often feels surprisingly empty. This doesn't mean you should ignore advice or reject responsibilities. The opinions of people who genuinely care about you can be valuable. Wise counsel has helped countless people avoid mistakes and discover opportunities. The problem arises when advice becomes obedience and expectations become identity. There is a profound difference between listening to others and surrendering your life to their approval. The first expands your perspective. The second shrinks your freedom. Here's something worth remembering. Every person you admire has disappointed someone. Every successful entrepreneur faced skeptics. Every respected artist received criticism. Every influential leader made unpopular decisions. If they had made approval their highest priority, they would never have become who they were meant to be. The same is true for you. The goal isn't to become selfish or indifferent to others. It isn't about refusing compromise or caring only about yourself. Healthy relationships require empathy, kindness, and cooperation. But they should never require abandoning your identity. Your opinions matter. Your dreams matter. Your values matter. The people who genuinely care about you may not always agree with your choices, but they will respect your honesty and your courage to live according to your convictions. As long as your life is directed by the need for approval, someone else will always hold the steering wheel. The moment you decide that your values deserve a seat at the table, everything begins to change. Because a life spent pleasing everyone else may earn applause, but a life lived authentically earns something far more valuable: peace. Chapter 4. Breaking free from the comparison trap. Imagine running a race where every runner is headed toward a different destination. One runner is training for speed, another is running for health, a third is simply enjoying the scenery. Yet instead of focusing on your own finish line, you spend the entire race looking sideways, measuring every step against someone else's progress. No matter how well you're doing, you'll never feel like you're winning. This is the comparison trap. It is one of the most common ways social pressure steals our confidence. While approval seeking depends on the opinions of others, comparison goes one step further. It convinces us that our worth depends on how we measure up against everyone around us. Comparison feels so natural that we rarely question it. From childhood, we're surrounded by rankings. Test scores compare students, sports compare athletes, performance reviews compare employees, social media compares lifestyles. Society constantly encourages us to ask, am I ahead or behind? Without realizing it, we begin treating life as a competition. But here's the problem. Life was never designed to be a single race. Every person begins with different circumstances, different strengths, different opportunities, and different dreams. Comparing your journey to someone else's is like comparing the growth of an oak tree to a bamboo plant. One grows slowly and steadily. The other appears to do almost nothing for years before suddenly rising at an incredible pace. Neither is failing. They're simply growing according to their own nature. Unfortunately, comparison doesn't allow us to see that truth. Instead, it quietly changes the way we think. Someone receives a promotion, and instead of celebrating their success, you begin questioning your own progress. A friend buys a new house, and suddenly your home feels inadequate. A colleague receives recognition, and your accomplishments no longer seem meaningful. Nothing about your life has actually changed, only your perspective has. Comparison has an unusual way of stealing joy without changing reality. Perhaps nowhere is this more obvious than on social media. Every day, millions of people scroll through carefully selected moments from other people's lives. Vacations, achievements, celebrations, perfect meals, smiling families, luxury cars, and exciting adventures appear one after another. What we rarely see are the arguments, disappointments, failures, loneliness, financial struggles, or moments of uncertainty that exist behind those carefully chosen images. We're comparing our everyday reality to someone else's highlight reel. Imagine someone who has worked hard to build a small business. They are making steady progress and genuinely enjoying the journey. One evening, they open social media and see another entrepreneur announcing a $1 million milestone. Instantly, their own success feels insignificant. They begin wondering why they're so far behind. But what they don't see is that the other entrepreneur may have spent 10 years building that business, faced countless failures, or even inherited advantages that are invisible online. Comparison rarely gives us the full story. It gives us carefully edited fragments. Another reason comparison is so destructive is that there will always be someone ahead of you. No matter how successful you become, another person will have more wealth, greater recognition, a larger audience, or a more impressive title. If your happiness depends on being ahead of everyone else, happiness will always remain just out of reach. Likewise, there will always be someone who has less than you. Basing your confidence on being superior isn't healthy either. It creates temporary satisfaction built on unstable ground. True confidence cannot grow from constantly looking around. It grows from looking within. So how do we escape the comparison trap? The first step is changing the questions we ask ourselves. Instead of asking, "Am I better than someone else?" ask, "Am I becoming better than I was yesterday?" That simple shift changes everything. Now your competition is no longer the entire world. It's your previous self. Growth becomes personal instead of competitive. The second step is defining success for yourself. Many people spend years chasing goals they never actually chose. They pursue careers because they seem prestigious. They buy expensive possessions because they symbolize status. They follow paths that earn admiration while ignoring what genuinely brings them fulfillment. But success without personal meaning often feels empty. Take a moment to imagine reaching the top of a mountain that someone else chose for you. The view might be beautiful, but if it wasn't your mountain to climb, the victory won't feel complete. Real success begins by asking deeper questions. What kind of life brings you peace? What values matter most to you? What work gives you purpose? What relationships make you feel truly alive? The answers will be different for every person, and that's exactly the point. Another powerful habit is practicing gratitude. Comparison focuses on what is missing. Gratitude focuses on what is already present. When you intentionally recognize your progress, your strengths, your opportunities, and the people who support you, your mind gradually shifts from scarcity to abundance. This doesn't mean ignoring ambition. You can still dream bigger, work harder, and pursue greater goals. The difference is that your motivation comes from inspiration rather than insecurity. You're growing because you want to become your best self, not because you're desperately trying to keep up with someone else. Finally, remember that every remarkable person has walked a unique path. Some found success early, others struggled for decades before achieving their breakthrough. Some built businesses, others built families, communities, ideas, or acts of kindness that never made headlines but changed lives forever. There is no universal timeline for fulfillment. There is only your timeline. The moment you stop measuring your life against someone else's, you reclaim something priceless: your peace, your confidence, your freedom. Because the purpose of your life is not to become a better version of someone else. It is to become the fullest expression of who you were created to be. When you stop chasing another person's definition of success, you finally create one that belongs entirely to you. And that is the moment comparison loses its power. Not because everyone else disappears, but because your own path finally becomes enough. Chapter 5. Rediscovering your authentic identity. Imagine waking up one morning with no expectations placed upon you, no pressure to impress anyone, no fear of criticism, no need to fit into a role that others have written for you. Who would you be? It's a simple question. Yet for many people, it's surprisingly difficult to answer. After years of adapting to other people's expectations, many of us lose sight of who we truly are. We become so skilled at meeting the demands of family, friends, co-workers, and society that we begin confusing those expectations with our own identity. Some people become the responsible one. Others become the successful one, the quiet one, the funny one, or the dependable one. These roles may contain pieces of who we are, but they are not the whole story. An authentic identity is not something society gives you. It is something you discover. The challenge is that discovering it requires peeling away years of conditioning. Think of a sculptor standing before a large block of marble. The masterpiece isn't created by adding more stone. It already exists within the block. The sculptor simply removes everything that doesn't belong. Rediscovering yourself works much the same way. It isn't about becoming someone new. It's about removing the layers of fear, comparison, expectations, and approval-seeking that have hidden your true self. The first layer to examine is your values. Values are the principles that guide your decisions when no one is watching. They influence how you define success, how you treat people, and what gives your life meaning. Yet many people never consciously identify them. Instead, they inherit values from parents, culture, or society without asking whether those beliefs truly reflect who they are. Perhaps you've been taught that success means earning the highest salary, owning the biggest house, or gaining public recognition. Those goals aren't necessarily wrong, but ask yourself an important question. If no one could see my achievements, would I still pursue them? Your answer reveals a great deal about what truly matters to you. Authenticity begins when your actions align with your deepest values instead of your desire for approval. The second layer is your passions. Passion isn't always a dramatic calling that appears overnight. More often, it's found in the activities that make you lose track of time, the problems you naturally enjoy solving, and the conversations that energize you. As children, we often explored these interests freely. We drew pictures because we enjoyed drawing. We built things because we were curious. We asked endless questions because learning felt exciting. Then gradually, practicality and expectations took over. Some dreams were labeled unrealistic. Some interests were considered unimportant. Some talents were ignored because they didn't fit society's definition of success. Over time, many people stopped listening to what genuinely excited them. Instead, they learned to pursue what impressed others. Rediscovering your authentic identity requires giving yourself permission to become curious again. Not every passion needs to become a career. Sometimes it simply needs space to exist. Another important step is learning to separate your identity from your roles. You may be a parent, a student, an employee, an entrepreneur, or a friend. These are responsibilities. They are not your identity. Careers change, relationships change, life circumstances change. If your entire identity depends on a role, you'll feel lost whenever that role changes. Instead, build your identity around qualities that remain stable. Your honesty, your compassion, your resilience, your curiosity, your integrity. These are foundations that cannot be taken away by a job title or another person's opinion. Self-reflection is another powerful tool in this journey. In today's fast-paced world, silence has become rare. We fill every spare moment with notifications, conversations, entertainment, and endless information. Yet without quiet reflection, it's difficult to hear your own inner voice. Take time to ask yourself meaningful questions. What moments make me feel most alive? Which decisions have brought me the deepest sense of peace? When do I feel like I'm pretending? What beliefs do I hold simply because I've never questioned them? These questions don't always produce immediate answers, but they begin a conversation with yourself that many people have avoided for years. One of the greatest obstacles to authenticity is fear. Fear whispers that if people see the real you, they may reject you, so you continue wearing masks. One for work, one for family, one for social situations, one for online life. Eventually, keeping track of them becomes exhausting. The irony is that authenticity often creates stronger relationships, not weaker ones. When you stop pretending to be perfect, people trust you more. When you speak honestly with kindness, others respect you more. When you live according to your values, you naturally attract people who appreciate you for who you really are, rather than for the image you've created. Of course, not everyone will approve. Some people prefer the version of you that always agreed, always pleased, and never challenged expectations. That's okay. Remember, the goal of authenticity isn't universal approval, it's inner alignment. Consider a compass. No matter how strong the wind becomes, the compass continues pointing north. Likewise, an authentic person may encounter criticism, disagreement, or pressure, but their decisions remain guided by deeply held values rather than changing opinions. That doesn't mean becoming stubborn or refusing to learn. It means having a clear internal direction. As you rediscover your authentic identity, you'll notice something remarkable. Decision-making becomes simpler. You spend less time wondering what other people expect because you already know what matters most to you. Confidence grows naturally because your choices become consistent with your values. Peace replaces confusion because your outer life begins reflecting your inner truth. Authenticity is not about becoming fearless. It's about deciding that your truth matters more than your fear. Your identity has never been lost. It has simply been buried beneath years of expectations, comparisons, and the desire to be accepted. Remove those layers one by one. Listen to your own voice again. Trust your values. Follow your curiosity. Live according to your convictions. Because the greatest freedom in life is not becoming the person everyone expects. It is having the courage to become the person you have always been. Chapter 6. Building confidence from within. Confidence is one of the most misunderstood qualities in the world. Many people believe it belongs only to the naturally gifted, the highly successful, or those who never seem to doubt themselves. We look at accomplished leaders, athletes, entrepreneurs, and public speakers and assume they were simply born with an unshakable belief in themselves. But confidence rarely begins that way. More often, it is quietly built through countless small decisions, repeated consistently over time. It is not a personality trait reserved for a fortunate few. It is a skill that anyone can develop. And perhaps the most important lesson of all is this: lasting confidence does not come from what other people think about you. It comes from what you believe about yourself after repeatedly proving that you can trust your own actions. Throughout this audiobook, we've uncovered how social pressure and the need for approval shape our choices. We've seen how comparison steals joy and how authenticity begins with understanding our true identity. But none of those changes can last unless they are supported by genuine confidence. Without inner confidence, the opinions of others will always feel louder than your own voice. You may know what you believe, yet still hesitate to act on it because you're afraid of criticism or rejection. Confidence becomes the bridge between knowing who you are and having the courage to live as that person. One of the biggest mistakes people make is confusing confidence with arrogance. Arrogance seeks to appear superior. It constantly compares, competes, and tries to prove worth by standing above others. Confidence is entirely different. A confident person doesn't need to convince everyone they're important. They don't require constant praise or attention. They understand that their value isn't determined by applause. True confidence is quiet. It allows you to admit mistakes without feeling worthless. It allows you to celebrate someone else's success without feeling threatened. It allows you to walk into a room without wondering whether everyone approves of you because your self-worth no longer depends on their opinions. Many people spend years chasing confidence in all the wrong places. They believe a promotion will finally make them confident. They think earning more money, buying a nicer home, driving a luxury car, gaining thousands of followers online, or receiving admiration from others will eliminate self-doubt. While these achievements can certainly bring satisfaction, they cannot provide permanent confidence because they all depend on circumstances that can change. If your confidence comes from your job, what happens if you lose it? If it comes from your appearance, what happens as you grow older? If it comes from praise, what happens when criticism inevitably arrives? Confidence built on external validation is fragile because it rests on foundations you cannot fully control. Real confidence begins with something much simpler: keeping promises to yourself. Every day, you make countless small agreements with your own mind. You tell yourself you'll wake up earlier tomorrow, you'll exercise after work, you'll read another chapter, you'll finish the project you've been avoiding, you'll speak honestly during an important conversation. Each time you follow through, your mind receives a powerful message: I can trust myself. Every time you repeatedly break those promises without good reason, another message begins to form: my own words don't matter. Confidence isn't destroyed overnight. It slowly weakens whenever you consistently ignore your own commitments. This is why small victories matter so much. Many people wait for one extraordinary achievement before allowing themselves to feel confident. But confidence rarely arrives after a single dramatic event. It grows through ordinary moments. Waking up when you said you would. Finishing a task even when motivation disappears. Choosing honesty when lying would be easier. Exercising when no one is watching. Reading instead of endlessly scrolling through your phone. Every small act of discipline becomes evidence that you are becoming someone who follows through. Over time, these seemingly insignificant victories accumulate into something remarkably powerful: self-trust. Competence is another essential ingredient of confidence. Think about learning any new skill. The first time you drive a car, everything feels overwhelming. You consciously think about every movement, every mirror, every turn. Mistakes seem inevitable, but after months or years of practice, driving becomes almost effortless. What changed? Not your personality, your competence. The same principle applies to every area of life. Public speaking becomes less frightening when you practice repeatedly. Leadership becomes less intimidating as you gain experience. Financial decisions become less stressful as you increase your knowledge. Confidence often follows competence, not the other way around. Too many people wait until they feel confident before taking action, when in reality, confidence is usually the reward for taking action consistently. Failure also plays a surprising role in building confidence. Many people assume confident individuals rarely fail. The opposite is often true. Confident people simply develop a healthier relationship with failure. Instead of viewing mistakes as proof that they aren't capable, they see them as part of the learning process. Consider a child learning to walk. No parent expects perfection after the first attempt. Falling is understood as part of growth, yet as adults, we often hold ourselves to impossible standards. We expect immediate excellence and interpret mistakes as evidence that we should quit. This mindset keeps countless people trapped inside their comfort zones. Every successful person you admire has experienced setbacks, criticism, rejection, and disappointment. Their confidence wasn't built because they avoided failure. It was built because they continued despite it. Another powerful habit of confident people is the way they speak to themselves. Imagine spending an entire day with someone who constantly criticized you, reminded you of every mistake, compared you to others, and predicted your failure before you even tried. You would probably avoid that person whenever possible. Yet many people allow that voice to exist inside their own minds every single day. The harshest critic they will ever meet is often themselves. Building confidence requires replacing destructive self-talk with honest encouragement. This doesn't mean pretending you're perfect or ignoring weaknesses. It means speaking to yourself with the same fairness, patience, and respect you would offer someone you genuinely care about. Instead of saying, "I'll never be good enough," try asking, "What can I learn from this experience?" That single shift transforms self-judgment into self-growth. Confidence also grows when your actions align with your values. Earlier, we explored the importance of discovering your authentic identity. Once you know what truly matters to you, confidence becomes easier because your decisions are guided by principles rather than popularity. Imagine standing before a strong lighthouse during a storm. Massive waves crash against it, powerful winds surround it, yet the lighthouse remains firmly rooted because its foundation runs deep beneath the surface. People with strong values develop similar stability. Criticism may still hurt, rejection may still disappoint, but they are no longer blown in every direction by changing opinions because they know who they are and what they stand for. It's equally important to remember that confidence doesn't require certainty. Many people postpone important decisions because they believe confident people always know exactly what will happen next. In reality, no one can predict the future with complete accuracy. Confidence is not the absence of uncertainty. It is the willingness to move forward despite uncertainty. Courage always comes first. Confidence follows. Every meaningful opportunity in life, starting a business, changing careers, speaking before an audience, beginning a relationship, pursuing a dream requires stepping into situations where success isn't guaranteed. Waiting until fear completely disappears often means waiting forever. Finally, understand that confidence is not a destination you reach once and keep forever. Like physical fitness, it requires regular attention. There will be days when you question yourself. There will be moments when criticism stings or unexpected setbacks shake your belief. That is part of being human. The goal isn't to become someone who never experiences doubt. The goal is to become someone who no longer allows doubt to make every important decision. Every time you choose integrity over approval, action over hesitation, and growth over comfort, you strengthen the foundation beneath your confidence. The world will always offer opinions about who you should become. Some people will encourage you, others will criticize you, and many will misunderstand you. Those voices will come and go throughout your life. But the one voice that will remain with you every single day is your own. Make it a voice that speaks with honesty, resilience, and trust. Because the strongest confidence is never given to you by the world. It is quietly earned every time you keep your word, honor your values, and prove to yourself that you are capable of becoming the person you choose to be. Chapter 7. The Courage to Say No. Imagine carrying a backpack that grows heavier every time someone asks you for a favor. At first, you barely notice the extra weight. Saying yes feels polite. It feels generous. It feels like the right thing to do. But with every unnecessary commitment, every obligation accepted out of guilt, and every promise made at the expense of your own well-being, the backpack becomes heavier. Eventually, you're exhausted. Not because life is unfair, but because you've been carrying responsibilities that were never yours to bear. This is the hidden cost of never saying no. For many people, the word no feels uncomfortable. It brings fear of disappointing others, damaging relationships, or being seen as selfish. So instead, they say yes when they want to say no. They agree to extra work, attend events they don't enjoy, lend money they can't afford to lose, and sacrifice their own priorities to avoid making someone else uncomfortable. At first, this behavior often earns praise. People describe them as kind, reliable, and helpful. But beneath that reputation, another story begins to unfold. They become overwhelmed, emotionally drained, and increasingly disconnected from their own needs. The truth is, constantly saying yes isn't always kindness. Sometimes it's fear. Fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of losing approval. When your decisions are driven by fear rather than genuine generosity, your yes loses its meaning. One of the greatest misunderstandings about boundaries is the belief that they push people away. In reality, healthy boundaries create healthier relationships. They allow people to understand what you can genuinely give without sacrificing your peace, your values, or your well-being. Think about the safety instructions given before every flight. Passengers are always told to put on their own oxygen mask before helping someone else. At first, this advice seems selfish, but in reality, it's practical wisdom. If you cannot breathe, you cannot help anyone. The same principle applies to life. You cannot consistently support others if you're constantly neglecting yourself. Learning to say no begins with recognizing that your time, energy, and attention are limited resources. Every yes is automatically a no to something else. When you agree to work late every evening, you may be saying no to your family. When you spend hours solving everyone else's problems, you may be saying no to your own goals. When you constantly prioritize other people's happiness, you may be saying no to your own peace. Every decision carries an opportunity cost. The question isn't simply whether you can say yes. The question is whether you should. One reason saying no feels so difficult is that many people confuse boundaries with rejection. They assume declining a request means rejecting the person making it. But there's an important difference. You can value someone while refusing a request. You can love someone while disagreeing with them. You can respect someone without sacrificing your values. Healthy relationships understand this distinction. Imagine an employee who is known for always accepting extra work. Whenever a colleague asks for help, they immediately agree. Whenever the manager needs someone to stay late, they volunteer. At first, everyone appreciates their willingness, but after months of overcommitting, They become exhausted, their performance begins to decline, and frustration quietly builds. One day, another request arrives. Instead of automatically saying yes, they calmly respond, "I'd like to help, but I can't take on additional work right now, because I want to give my full attention to the responsibilities I already have." Notice what happened. They didn't become rude. They didn't attack anyone. They simply respected their own limits. That is what healthy boundaries look like. Saying no doesn't require anger or lengthy explanations. In fact, the more confident you become, the simpler your responses often become. "I appreciate you asking, but I can't. That doesn't work for me. I have other priorities right now. Thank you, but I'll have to decline." These responses are honest, respectful, and clear. Many people feel guilty when they first begin setting boundaries. If you've spent years pleasing others, people may be surprised when you suddenly start protecting your time and energy. Some may even resist the change because they benefited from your inability to say no. Remember, not everyone will celebrate your boundaries. Those who were comfortable with unlimited access to your time may see your limits as inconvenience, but that doesn't mean your boundaries are wrong. In fact, healthy people usually respect healthy boundaries. Those who become angry every time you protect your well-being often reveal more about themselves than about you. Another important lesson is understanding that saying no to one thing allows you to say yes to something more meaningful. Every successful person protects their priorities. An athlete says no to unhealthy habits because they say yes to excellence. A writer says no to constant distractions because they say yes to creating meaningful work. A loving parent may say no to unnecessary overtime because they say yes to being present with their family. Every meaningful achievement requires selective commitment. You simply cannot say yes to everything and still remain focused on what matters most. Boundaries also strengthen self-respect. Every time you honor your values instead of seeking approval, you send yourself a powerful message: "My needs matter too." That message gradually becomes the foundation of confidence. Instead of constantly wondering what everyone else expects, you begin asking a healthier question: does this align with the life I want to build? That single question transforms decision-making. You stop reacting to every request. You start choosing intentionally. Of course, saying no doesn't mean becoming selfish or refusing to help others. Compassion, generosity, and kindness remain essential qualities. There will be times when supporting someone requires sacrifice, and those moments often create the strongest relationships. The key difference is choice. Authentic generosity comes from willingness. People-pleasing comes from fear. One leaves you fulfilled, the other leaves you resentful. As you continue your journey toward authentic living, remember that every boundary you set is a declaration of self-respect. Every respectful no protects a more meaningful yes. Every time you refuse to abandon your values for temporary approval, you strengthen your identity. You teach people how to treat you. More importantly, you teach yourself that your voice deserves to be heard. Because the courage to say no is never just about refusing a request. It is about saying yes to your peace, yes to your priorities, yes to your integrity, and yes to the life you are choosing to create, one decision at a time. Chapter 8. Standing Strong Against Peer Pressure. Picture yourself standing at a crossroads. One road is crowded with people moving in the same direction. They seem confident, certain, and united. The other road is quieter. There are fewer people on it, and for a moment, you wonder if you're making a mistake by even considering it. Deep inside, you know the quieter road aligns with your values, but another voice whispers, "What if everyone else is right? What if I don't fit in?" This is where peer pressure begins, not with force, but with doubt. Many people associate peer pressure with teenagers being encouraged to smoke, drink, or break the rules. While those situations certainly exist, peer pressure doesn't disappear when we become adults. It simply becomes more subtle. Instead of classmates urging us to fit in, we encounter co-workers who encourage unethical shortcuts, friends who pressure us to spend beyond our means, relatives who expect us to follow traditional life paths, or online communities that make us feel as though we must think, look and live exactly like everyone else. The faces change. The pressure remains. Peer pressure is powerful because it speaks to one of our deepest psychological needs, the desire to belong. Human beings are social creatures. We naturally seek connection, acceptance, and community. There's nothing wrong with wanting to feel included. Problems arise only when belonging comes at the cost of abandoning your values. Imagine a young professional who has recently joined a successful company. During their first few weeks, they notice that some co-workers occasionally manipulate reports to make quarterly results appear better than they actually are. No one openly calls it dishonesty. Instead, it's described as how things are done here. One afternoon, a colleague quietly suggests they do the same. At that moment, two forces collide. One is the desire to fit in. The other is personal integrity. Many of life's defining moments are not dramatic events. They are quiet decisions like this, moments when no one else may fully understand the battle taking place inside you. Standing strong against peer pressure begins with recognizing that popularity and correctness are not the same thing. History has repeatedly shown that entire groups of people can believe something that later proves to be harmful or completely wrong. If everyone simply followed the crowd without question, progress would be impossible. Every meaningful change began with someone willing to think differently. Every great invention challenged conventional thinking. Every movement for justice began because someone refused to accept the status quo. Every remarkable achievement required the courage to step away from the crowd. Following your values may sometimes make you feel isolated in the short term, but it often leads to greater respect in the long run. One of the most effective ways to resist peer pressure is to decide your values before you're tested. Too many people wait until they're standing in a difficult situation before deciding what they believe. By then, emotions, fear, and social influence are already affecting their judgment. Think of values as your internal compass. A compass doesn't wait until a storm arrives before deciding which direction is north. It already knows. Likewise, if you've already decided that honesty, kindness, responsibility, and integrity are non-negotiable principles, difficult decisions become much clearer. You won't need to invent your standards under pressure because you've already established them. Another powerful strategy is learning assertive communication. Many people believe there are only two ways to respond to pressure, either become aggressive or remain passive. But there is a third option, assertiveness. Assertiveness means expressing your thoughts clearly while respecting both yourself and the other person. Suppose friends encourage you to participate in something that conflicts with your values. Instead of becoming defensive or making excuses, you might simply say, "That's not something I'm comfortable with, but I hope you all have a great time." Notice the difference. You're not attacking anyone. You're not apologizing for your values. You're simply communicating honestly. Confidence often sounds quieter than people expect. Another reason people struggle with peer pressure is that they overestimate the consequences of saying no. We imagine everyone will reject us, criticize us, or stop including us altogether. While that sometimes happens, reality is often much less dramatic. Most people are too focused on their own lives to spend much time judging your decisions. And those who genuinely respect you will usually respect your boundaries as well. If someone repeatedly pressures you to betray your values in order to remain part of the group, it's worth asking an important question. Is this acceptance worth the price I'm paying? Real friendship should never require you to become someone you're not. The same principle applies in the digital world. Social media has created a new form of peer pressure, unlike anything previous generations experienced. Every day, millions of people are exposed to trends, opinions, lifestyles, and challenges that encourage conformity. Algorithms often reward whatever is popular, making it easy to believe that widespread agreement automatically equals truth. But popularity is not the same as wisdom. Just because thousands or even millions of people are doing something doesn't mean it's right for you. Learning to pause before following a trend is one of the healthiest habits you can develop. Ask yourself simple questions. Does this align with my values? Would I still make this choice if no one else knew about it? Am I acting from conviction or from fear of being left out? Those questions create space between pressure and action. Within that space lies freedom. It's also important to remember that courage is contagious. When one person respectfully refuses unhealthy pressure, others often feel empowered to do the same. Many people secretly want permission to act according to their values, but they're waiting for someone else to go first. Your integrity may inspire someone you never even realize is watching. This is how authentic leadership begins, not with authority, but with example. Of course, resisting peer pressure isn't always easy. There will be moments when standing alone feels uncomfortable. You may lose certain opportunities, friendships or invitations, but ask yourself this: what is more painful? Temporary discomfort from staying true to yourself, or years of regret from abandoning your principles? One lasts for a moment, the other can last a lifetime. As your confidence grows, something remarkable begins to happen. You stop viewing rejection as evidence that something is wrong with you. Instead, you begin seeing it as a sign that not every environment is meant for you. You become more intentional about where you invest your time, energy, and loyalty. You realize that fitting in is far less important than belonging. Fitting in requires changing yourself to match the crowd. Belonging happens when you're accepted without pretending to be someone else. Never confuse those two experiences. One demands a mask, the other welcomes the real you. Standing strong against peer pressure does not mean standing against people. It means standing for your values, your integrity, and your future. It means having the wisdom to recognize that every small decision shapes the person you are becoming. Every time you choose honesty over convenience, courage over comfort, and authenticity over acceptance, you strengthen your character. The crowd will always have an opinion. Trends will come and go. Expectations will change, but your character is something you carry for the rest of your life. Protect it carefully, because in the end, the strongest people are not those who successfully follow every crowd. They are the ones who have the courage to walk their own path, even when they must take the first step alone. Chapter 9. Letting go of the fear of judgment. Imagine standing on a stage with a bright spotlight shining directly on you. Hundreds of people are sitting in the audience, watching every move you make. Every word feels important. Every mistake seems enormous. You become painfully aware of how you walk, how you speak, and even where you place your hands. Now imagine discovering that most of those people weren't paying nearly as much attention to you as you thought. Some were thinking about their own problems, some were wondering how they looked, others were planning tomorrow's schedule, or worrying about their own fears. This is one of the greatest illusions we carry through life, the belief that everyone is constantly judging us. The fear of judgment is one of the strongest forms of social pressure because it exists largely in our imagination. Certainly people do form opinions, that is part of human nature. But we often exaggerate how much those opinions matter and how much attention others are actually giving us. Psychologists sometimes refer to this tendency as the spotlight effect. We naturally assume that other people notice our mistakes, flaws, and awkward moments far more than they really do. In reality, most people are far more focused on themselves than on us. They are worrying about their own appearance, their own careers, their own relationships, and their own insecurities. Understanding this simple truth can be incredibly freeing. Think back to a time when you made an embarrassing mistake in public. Perhaps you stumbled while walking, forgot someone's name, or misspoke during an important presentation. At the time, it may have felt unforgettable. Yet ask yourself honestly, how many embarrassing moments from strangers do you remember from last month? Probably very few. The same is true for most people observing you. They notice, then they move on. The fear, however, often stays with us much longer than the event itself. One reason judgment feels so threatening is that we confuse criticism with rejection. We assume that if someone disagrees with us, they must also reject us as a person. But disagreement and rejection are not the same thing. Healthy relationships include different opinions. Healthy workplaces include different perspectives. Healthy societies grow because people challenge ideas and improve them. If everyone agreed all the time, progress would stop. Learning to separate your identity from other people's opinions is one of the greatest acts of emotional freedom. Imagine an aspiring public speaker preparing for their first presentation. They spend weeks practicing, yet moments before stepping onto the stage, one thought dominates their mind. What if people think I'm terrible? Because of that fear, they consider cancelling altogether. Now imagine they choose courage instead. The presentation isn't perfect. They forget a sentence, stumble over a few words, and feel nervous throughout. But afterward, several audience members thank them for sharing valuable ideas. Did everyone think they were perfect? Probably not. Did that matter? Not nearly as much as they imagined. Had they allowed fear of judgment to win, they would have missed an opportunity to grow. This pattern repeats throughout life. Many dreams remain unrealized, not because people lack talent, but because they fear being seen while learning. They wait until they're perfect before taking action. The problem is that perfection never arrives. Every expert was once a beginner. Every successful author wrote imperfect first drafts. Every accomplished musician played wrong notes. Every confident leader once doubted themselves. Growth always happens publicly to some degree. Waiting until no one can criticize you means waiting forever. Another important lesson is recognizing that criticism comes in different forms. Not all criticism is harmful. Constructive criticism is offered to help you improve. It focuses on behavior rather than attacking your worth as a person. It may feel uncomfortable, but it contains valuable information. Destructive criticism is different. Its purpose is often to discourage, insult, or diminish rather than help. Learning to distinguish between these two forms is essential. When someone offers thoughtful feedback, listen carefully. You don't have to agree with every suggestion, but remain open to learning. When someone simply seeks to tear you down, remember that their words often reveal more about their own mindset than about your value. Not every opinion deserves equal attention. Imagine walking through a city where hundreds of people pass by every hour. Would you stop and ask every stranger for directions to your destination? Of course not. You would seek advice from people who actually know the way. The same principle applies to opinions. Be selective about whose judgment you allow to influence your decisions. The opinion of someone who lives according to values you admire carries far more weight than criticism from someone who neither understands your goals nor wishes you well. Another powerful way to overcome fear of judgment is to redefine failure. Many people believe failure is embarrassing because they assume others will think less of them. But failure is simply information. It reveals what worked, what didn't, and what can be improved. Imagine learning to ride a bicycle. Falling isn't evidence that you're incapable. It's evidence that you're learning. Life works the same way. Every mistake contains a lesson if you're willing to see it. The only people who never make mistakes are the people who never attempt anything meaningful. Courage doesn't eliminate fear. It teaches you to move despite it. There will always be people who misunderstand your intentions. Some will criticize your choices simply because they would have chosen differently. Others may judge you because your authenticity challenges their own comfort. Remember this: when you begin living according to your values instead of seeking approval, not everyone will applaud. Some people benefited from the version of you that always agreed, always complied, and never questioned expectations. Your growth may make them uncomfortable. That discomfort is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to live with integrity. One of the most liberating questions you can ask yourself whenever fear of judgment appears is this: will this opinion matter 5 years from now? Most of the time the answer is no. The awkward conversation, the critical comment online, the stranger's opinion, the embarrassing mistake. These moments feel enormous today because you're standing inside them. Viewed from the perspective of time, they become remarkably small. What often remains significant years later isn't the criticism you received, it's the decision you made because of it. Did you abandon your dream? Did you stay silent when your voice mattered? Did you choose safety instead of growth? Or did you continue anyway? The people who inspire us aren't remembered because everyone approved of them. They're remembered because they acted according to their convictions despite criticism. As you continue your journey toward authentic living, remember that judgment is unavoidable. If you follow the crowd, someone will judge you. If you choose a different path, someone will judge you. If you succeed, you'll be judged. If you fail, you'll be judged. Since judgment cannot be eliminated, it should never become the foundation of your decisions. Instead, let your values become your guide. When you know who you are, criticism becomes information instead of identity. Opinions become background noise instead of steering wheels. And fear slowly loses the power it once held over your life. Because the greatest tragedy is not that someone might judge you. The greatest tragedy is allowing that fear to stop you from becoming the person you were always capable of becoming. The world will always have opinions. You only have one life. Live it according to your values, not according to someone else's expectations. Chapter 10. Surround yourself with the right people. Have you ever noticed how your attitude changes depending on who you're with? Spend an evening with people who constantly complain, and before long, you may find yourself focusing on everything that's wrong with your life. Spend time with people who are optimistic, disciplined, and driven, and suddenly your own goals seem more achievable. The environment hasn't changed. You have. This is one of the most powerful truths about human behavior. The people around us quietly shape the person we become. Throughout this audiobook, we've explored how social pressure influences our decisions and how approval-seeking can pull us away from our authentic selves. But there is another side to social influence, one that is incredibly positive. While unhealthy relationships encourage conformity, healthy relationships encourage growth. The goal is not to isolate yourself from people, it is to become intentional about the people you allow to influence your life. Whether we realize it or not, every relationship leaves an imprint on our thinking. Conversations shape our beliefs. Habits spread through groups. Attitudes become contagious. If everyone around you believes that success is impossible, you may eventually begin believing it too. If those closest to you constantly gossip, complain, or settle for less than they are capable of, it becomes much easier to accept those behaviors as normal. The opposite is also true. When you're surrounded by people who value honesty, discipline, kindness, and personal growth, those qualities begin to feel natural. They raise your standards without forcing you. They inspire you simply by the way they live. Think of a garden. If healthy plants are surrounded by weeds that steal sunlight, nutrients, and space, their growth becomes limited. But when the weeds are removed and the soil is cared for, those same plants begin to flourish. Your environment works much the same way. The people around you either nourish your growth or quietly drain it. This doesn't mean judging people by their wealth, status, or achievements. Someone can be highly successful professionally while being deeply negative, dishonest, or emotionally unhealthy. Likewise, someone with modest accomplishments may possess wisdom, integrity, generosity, and resilience that make them an incredible influence. Character matters more than appearance. One of the easiest ways to evaluate a relationship is to ask yourself a few honest questions. Do I feel encouraged after spending time with this person? Can I be myself around them? Do they celebrate my growth, or do they become uncomfortable when I improve? Do they challenge me to become better, or do they encourage me to remain the same? The answers often reveal whether a relationship is helping or hindering your journey. Imagine two friends beginning new chapters in their lives. The first surrounds themselves with people who constantly make excuses. Every goal is dismissed as unrealistic. Every challenge becomes proof that success isn't possible. Whenever they share an ambition, they're told, "Be realistic," or "People like us don't do things like that." The second chooses to spend time with people who ask different questions. What can you learn from this? How can you improve? What would happen if you gave it your best effort? Neither group guarantees success, but one creates possibility, The other creates limitation. Another important truth is that authentic relationships never require you to wear a mask. If you constantly feel the need to hide your opinions, pretend to enjoy things you don't enjoy, or suppress parts of your personality just to remain accepted, you're not experiencing genuine connection, you're experiencing performance. Real belonging is different. It allows you to be honest without fear. It welcomes your individuality instead of demanding your conformity. It encourages growth instead of control. That doesn't mean authentic relationships are always easy. Good friends challenge one another. Mentors offer difficult feedback. Loving family members sometimes disagree. The difference is intention. Healthy people challenge you because they care about your growth. Unhealthy people pressure you because they care about controlling your choices. Learning to recognize that difference can change your life. Of course, building a healthier circle doesn't always mean ending every difficult relationship. Some relationships, especially within families or workplaces, cannot simply be walked away from. In those situations, healthy boundaries become essential. You may not control who you work with or who you're related to, but you can control how much influence their opinions have over your decisions. Remember, proximity does not require permission. Someone can be physically close to you without becoming the loudest voice in your mind. It's also important to become the kind of person you hope to attract. Many people search endlessly for supportive friends while forgetting to become supportive themselves. If you want honest relationships, practice honesty. If you want encouragement, encourage others. If you want loyalty, be loyal. If you want people who respect your boundaries, respect theirs as well. Healthy relationships are built through mutual character, not one-sided expectations. Mentors also play an important role in shaping our lives. Every successful person has learned from someone who walked the path before them. A mentor doesn't make your decisions for you. Instead, they expand your perspective, challenge your assumptions, and help you avoid unnecessary mistakes. Sometimes a mentor is someone you know personally. Other times, it may be an author, teacher, or speaker whose wisdom continues to guide your thinking through their work. Choose carefully whose voices you repeatedly allow into your mind. The books you read, the podcasts you listen to, the conversations you have, the content you consume online. These influences become part of your environment just as much as the people you meet face to face. Finally, remember that the purpose of surrounding yourself with the right people is not to create a life where everyone agrees with you. Diversity of thought helps us grow. Constructive disagreement sharpens our understanding. The goal is something much deeper: to build relationships where authenticity is welcomed, where honesty is respected, where growth is celebrated, where mistakes become opportunities to learn rather than reasons for rejection. As you continue your journey, take an honest look at the people who influence your thinking the most. Ask yourself whether they inspire courage or fear, confidence or insecurity, authenticity or approval-seeking. Because the people closest to you are quietly helping shape the person you'll become tomorrow. Choose them wisely. And whenever possible, become the kind of person whose presence helps others become more authentic, more confident, and more hopeful. After all, the greatest relationships are not the ones that ask you to fit in. They are the ones that give you the freedom and the courage to fully become yourself. Chapter 11. Living Authentically Every Day. By now you've learned how social pressure quietly shapes your decisions, why approval can become addictive, how comparison steals your confidence, and why setting boundaries and surrounding yourself with the right people are essential. But understanding these ideas is only the beginning. Knowledge alone doesn't transform a life. Transformation happens when wisdom becomes action, and action becomes habit. Living authentically is not a decision you make once. It is a choice you make every single day, often in ordinary moments that no one else notices. Many people imagine authenticity as a dramatic act of courage. They picture someone quitting an unfulfilling job overnight, ending toxic relationships, or making bold public declarations about who they are. While those moments certainly happen, authentic living is usually much quieter. It is found in the small choices that gradually shape your character. It is choosing honesty instead of pretending. It is expressing your opinion respectfully, even when it's unpopular. It is making decisions based on your values rather than temporary approval. Over time, these seemingly ordinary choices create an extraordinary life. One reason people struggle to live authentically is that they wait until they feel completely fearless. They believe confidence must come before action. But authenticity doesn't require the absence of fear. It requires the willingness to act despite fear. There will always be moments when your heart beats faster before speaking the truth. There will always be situations where standing by your principles feels uncomfortable. The goal isn't to eliminate discomfort. The goal is to stop allowing discomfort to become your decision maker. Imagine a compass traveling through changing weather. Some days the sky is clear. Other days storms arrive, winds become stronger, and visibility disappears. Yet the compass continues pointing in the same direction because it isn't controlled by the weather around it. It is guided by something internal. Living authentically works the same way. Circumstances, opinions, and trends will constantly change, but your values can remain steady. When your decisions are guided by principles instead of pressure, you become far more consistent in the person you choose to be. One of the simplest ways to practice authenticity is by asking yourself a powerful question before making important decisions. Am I doing this because it aligns with my values, or because I'm afraid of what others might think? That single question creates a pause between pressure and action. Within that pause, you give yourself permission to choose intentionally rather than automatically. Sometimes you'll still make mistakes. Sometimes you'll realize afterward that fear influenced your decision. That's perfectly normal. Authenticity is a lifelong practice, not a destination of perfection. Honest communication is another cornerstone of authentic living. Many people believe honesty requires harshness, but that isn't true. You can be truthful while remaining kind. You can disagree without becoming disrespectful. You can express your needs without attacking someone else's. In fact, honesty delivered with compassion often strengthens relationships because it builds trust. People may not always agree with you, but they will usually know where they stand with you. Authentic communication replaces manipulation with clarity and replaces assumptions with understanding. Living authentically also means allowing your actions to match your words. Integrity is the bridge between what you believe and how you behave. It's easy to talk about courage, kindness, or discipline when circumstances are favorable. The real test comes when those values become inconvenient. Integrity is choosing honesty even when lying would be easier. It is honoring commitments even when no one is watching. It is treating people with respect even when they cannot offer you anything in return. Every time your actions align with your values, you strengthen your character and deepen your self-respect. Another important habit is learning to become comfortable with being misunderstood. One of the greatest barriers to authenticity is the desire to explain every decision until everyone approves of it. But the reality is that not everyone will understand your choices. Some people will question why you've changed. Others may prefer the version of you that always agreed with them. There will even be people who criticize your boundaries because they benefited from your lack of them. You cannot control those reactions, and you don't need to. Your responsibility is not to earn universal agreement. Your responsibility is to live according to your principles with humility and respect. Living authentically also requires regular self-reflection. The world is constantly trying to influence your attention, your priorities, and your identity. Without taking time to reflect, it's easy to drift back into old habits of comparison and approval seeking. Set aside moments to ask yourself honest questions. Did my actions today reflect my values? Did I speak truthfully? Did I make decisions out of conviction or out of fear? What kind of person am I becoming through my daily choices? These questions aren't meant to produce guilt. They're meant to create awareness, and awareness always comes before growth. It's equally important to give yourself grace along the journey. There will be days when you fall back into people-pleasing. There will be conversations you wish you had handled differently. There will be moments when fear wins. That doesn't mean you've failed. Growth is rarely a straight line. Every meaningful change includes setbacks, lessons, and opportunities to begin again. What matters most is not that you never stumble. What matters is that each time you recognize your mistake, you choose to return to your values rather than abandon them. Authenticity is also strengthened by consistency. One courageous decision can change your direction, but consistent decisions change your identity. Every day you choose honesty over approval, responsibility over excuses, courage over comfort, and integrity over popularity. You become a little more like the person you aspire to be. Eventually, those choices stop feeling like difficult decisions. They become your natural way of living. What once required great effort gradually becomes part of your character. As your authentic life grows stronger, something remarkable begins to happen. You spend less time comparing yourself to others because you're focused on your own purpose. You worry less about criticism because your self-worth no longer depends on other people's opinions. Your relationships become deeper because people are connecting with the real you instead of a carefully constructed image. Your confidence becomes steadier because it is rooted in self-respect rather than applause. Most importantly, you experience a sense of peace that cannot be purchased, borrowed, or earned through popularity. It comes from knowing that your outer life finally reflects your inner truth. Living authentically doesn't guarantee an easy life. You'll still face setbacks, disagreements, and moments of uncertainty, but those challenges become far easier to navigate when you're no longer fighting against yourself. There is incredible freedom in waking up each morning without needing to perform for the world. There is lasting strength in knowing that your choices are guided by your values instead of your fears. And there is profound fulfillment in building a life that genuinely belongs to you. Chapter 12. Your life, your choices, your legacy. Every life tells a story, not through grand speeches or unforgettable moments alone, but through thousands of small decisions made day after day. Every choice you make, whether to speak or remain silent, whether to follow your values or follow the crowd, whether to choose courage or comfort, becomes a sentence in the story of your life. Over time, those sentences become chapters, and those chapters become the legacy you leave behind. As we've journeyed through this audiobook, you've discovered something powerful. Social pressure is real, but it is not stronger than your ability to choose. Approval can influence you, but it doesn't have to define you. The opinions of others may surround you, but they never have to become the foundation of your identity. The greatest freedom any person can experience is the freedom to live according to their own values. Now, the question is no longer whether you understand these ideas. The question is whether you will live them. Many people spend their entire lives waiting for the perfect time to become themselves. They tell themselves they'll speak honestly after receiving one more promotion. They'll pursue their dream after earning more money. They'll stop worrying about other people's opinions when they become older, wiser, or more successful. But that perfect moment rarely arrives. Life doesn't suddenly give you permission to become authentic. You give yourself that permission. Every single day presents a new opportunity to make a different choice. Most of those choices won't seem dramatic. No audience will applaud. No headlines will celebrate them. Yet those ordinary moments quietly determine the direction of your life. When someone pressures you to compromise your values, you choose integrity. When fear tells you to stay silent, you choose honesty. When comparison whispers that you'll never be enough, you choose gratitude. When approval seems more attractive than authenticity, you choose yourself. Those choices may appear small, but they have extraordinary consequences over time. Imagine two people standing in exactly the same place today. Their lives look almost identical. They have similar jobs, similar opportunities, and similar challenges. One person spends the next 10 years making decisions based on what other people expect. Every major choice is filtered through the question, what will people think? They choose the safe career, avoid difficult conversations, suppress their dreams, and constantly adjust themselves to fit into every room they enter. The other person asks a different question. What choice best reflects my values? They still listen to advice. They still care about others. But they refuse to betray themselves simply to gain acceptance. At first, the difference between these two people seems almost invisible. But after 10 years, their lives often look completely different. One has earned approval but lost direction. The other has earned self-respect and built a life with purpose. This is the power of consistent choices. Many people believe legacy is something reserved for famous individuals. They imagine world leaders, best-selling authors, or business icons whose names appear in history books. But legacy is much more personal than that. Your legacy is the influence your life has on other people. It is the values your children learn by watching you. It is the kindness your friends remember long after a conversation ends. It is the honesty your co-workers come to trust. It is the courage that inspires someone else to make a difficult decision. You don't have to become famous to leave a meaningful legacy. You simply have to live intentionally. Think about the people who have influenced your own life the most. Perhaps it was a teacher who believed in your potential before you believed in yourself. Maybe it was a parent who demonstrated resilience during difficult times. Perhaps it was a friend who encouraged you to pursue a dream when everyone else doubted you. What made those people unforgettable wasn't their perfection, it was their character. They taught through example. Now someone is learning from yours. Whether you realize it or not, people are constantly observing how you respond to life. They notice how you handle setbacks. They see how you treat people who cannot benefit you. They watch how you react when your values are tested. You may never know whose life you're influencing, but influence doesn't require recognition. It requires consistency. As you continue your journey, remember that authentic living doesn't mean life suddenly becomes easy. There will still be criticism. There will still be rejection. There will still be moments when choosing integrity costs more than choosing convenience. There will still be days when fear whispers that it would be easier to return to old habits. On those days, remember how far you've come. Remember the person you were before you understood the invisible force of social pressure. Remember how often you measured your worth by other people's opinions. Remember how exhausting it was to wear masks, avoid conflict, and constantly seek approval. You are no longer that person. You now understand something many people spend their entire lives overlooking. Approval is temporary. Character is permanent. Popularity changes. Integrity endures. External success may impress people. Inner peace transforms lives. One of the greatest rewards of authentic living is not confidence alone. It is peace. The peace that comes from knowing your actions reflect your beliefs. The peace that comes from making decisions without constantly seeking permission. The peace that comes from looking in the mirror and recognizing the person staring back. No performance, no pretending, no masks, just honesty. That kind of peace cannot be purchased. It cannot be borrowed from someone else's approval. It can only be earned by living according to your values. As your confidence continues to grow, you'll also notice something remarkable. You begin to celebrate other people's success instead of comparing yourself to it. You become less interested in impressing people and more interested in serving them. You stop asking, "How can I fit in?" Instead, you ask, "How can I contribute?" That shift changes everything. Because authentic people don't spend their energy chasing acceptance. They spend their energy creating value. They build stronger families. They strengthen friendships. They improve workplaces. They encourage communities. And they often inspire others to begin their own journey toward authenticity. This is how positive change spreads. One courageous decision at a time. Congratulations on reaching the end of this journey. But in many ways, this isn't the end at all. It's the beginning of a new chapter, one that won't be written by society, by fear, or by the opinions of others. It will be written by you. Throughout this audiobook, you've discovered that social pressure is often invisible, yet incredibly powerful. You've learned why we naturally seek approval, how comparison steals our joy, why healthy boundaries protect our peace, and how authentic relationships help us grow. Most importantly, you've learned that true confidence doesn't come from pleasing everyone. It comes from being honest with yourself. Now comes the most important part: applying what you've learned. Don't wait for the perfect moment to start living authentically. There will always be another opinion, another trend, another expectation competing for your attention. The difference is that now you recognize those forces, and you have the tools to choose differently. Start small. Speak honestly in a conversation where you would normally stay silent. Say no to something that doesn't align with your values. Pursue a goal because it matters to you, not because it impresses someone else. Every authentic decision, no matter how small, strengthens your confidence and reminds you that your life belongs to you. There will still be moments of doubt. There will still be criticism, setbacks, and days when old habits try to return. That's part of the journey. Progress isn't measured by never stumbling. It's measured by always finding your way back to your values. As you move forward, remember this simple truth: the people who make the greatest impact on the world are rarely the ones who spend their lives seeking approval. They are the ones who have the courage to remain true to themselves, even when it's difficult. So live with integrity. Choose courage over comfort. Choose purpose over popularity. Choose authenticity over approval. Because the world doesn't need another copy of someone else. It needs the one person only you can be. Thank you for listening, and may every choice you make from this day forward bring you closer to the life that reflects your deepest values, your strongest character, and your most authentic self.